There is an old saying that says, "Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you." And that is a bunch of bull. Words hurt, especially when you're angry and you say things you shouldn't say. But to a little kid, sometimes words can be very injurious. When I was a little child, I had very thin hair, and my mother would put my hair in pigtails. It was easy for her to do, and she didn't know that the kids at school called me Piggy. But I did, and as a little child, I didn't like my name. So when I went to college, I became Lynn Latham in the drama department. And then when I became an adult and moved to Virginia, the children that I worked with in the mission center couldn't say Miss Peggy. They called me Miss Piggy, and I remember that. Whoa, we're not going to play that game. So I went to my middle name. So I became Miss Lynn in the middle of my life, just so I wouldn't have to have those sad memories come back again. But as it was, my life was filled with being called names. Just being called names. A lot of them are funny. A lot of them have meaning, and just a lot of them are, something you need to get used to. When I worked in downtown Newport News, the majority of the people that lived in the area were dark-skinned people. And I was a light-skinned woman, and I was trying to communicate to them, and they weren't the least bit interested. And so I decided I wanted them to come into the mission center and listen to the Bible studies and have a good time, but they wouldn't come in. So I realized I had to go out. So one day I made up my mind, this is the day I'm going out on the street and talk to people. And the next day I heard that they were talking about the white angel. And I thought to myself, white angel? Why are they calling me a white angel? But you see, I was so scared that all the blood had drained from my head, and I literally was very white that day to them. So for a while I was called a white angel. I was also called the Pied Piper. When I would go through the apartment complexes and the tenement houses, and I would round up the kids for Bible school, they'd follow me by the droves. 10, 20 kids would follow me and get in the van. And so people thought I was the Pied Piper. They were a little weary of me to start with. Got wearier when they knew me, but they still let the kids come, and I was the Pied Piper. It even happens in my own family. I went to visit a nephew in Oregon for Thanksgiving one year. And his little 4-year-old had never met me before. And so we went to the kitchen. We were sitting on stools at the kitchen counter. And he came up to me and he poked me. And he said, "You're Puffy." And I said, "Yes, I'm Aunt Puffy." Well, his parents were worried what I'd say, to his remark. But by then it was okay. So I'm Aunt Puffy to the people to my family in Oregon. I also have family in Houston, and they're teenagers, and they decided just to call me plain crazy. When I moved to Texas about 9 months ago, I moved close to a family, one of the family members, and their 3 little kids. For Christmas Eve, we went to church, and they'd been calling me silly old Aunt Peggy for years because I tickled them all the time and, was silly. I really am silly around kids. And so I looked at one of the kids and I said, "What would happen if you took the initial of every one of those words and made a word out of it?" He went, "Silly old Aunt Peggy." And he went, "Soap." Well, the next day at Christmas, my present said, "To soap." But New Year's, my present said, "To SOAPY." And I asked them, "Why are you calling me SOAPY?" And they said, "Because it's now silly old Aunt Peggy." Yay! So I couldn't be upset with that either. When I worked in Orlando and went up and down the streets trying to help people, one of the things that we did was give out the Sacagawea gold coin. And I would use it to tell the women how special they are, how God cares about them, how he cared about Sacagawea, who was a young woman that led the Lewis and Clark expedition, and how on the other side of the coin is an American Eagle in flight, and we all make the wrong choices sometimes, but we can always change direction. And the color of the coin was gold, and that's to remind us that we're more precious to God than gold. And that the shape of the coin, round, is that God is all around us. Even if we don't know Him, He's still around us and caring for them. And so they started calling me the Golden Lady. Now, a Sacagawea gold coin is $1. It is 100 pennies. But they wouldn't cash it. They didn't use them. They kept them in their pocket. And every time I'd see them, they would call me the Golden Lady again and show me the coin. When I worked in the inner city of Newport News, Virginia, and I was helping to resettle Vietnamese, there was one particular family that I had gotten a call from the Office of Refugee Resettlement on a Tuesday night. And the Refugee Resettlement Office said, we have a family of 10. We need jobs, a house, clothes, furnishings, and food for this family. And I'm like, she says, they're coming tomorrow. And I went, you've got to be kidding me. So I just called some churches and I said to the pastor, this is a need. If you can pray about it tonight at church, please. So they did. And the next day when the families came, we had food and clothes and jobs and furnishings and everything they needed. So they got the feeling that I was somebody special. I don't know why they get that feeling, but they did. So after a while, I kept checking on this family of 10 people because they had to all live in the same place. They couldn't live in an apartment complex, so they lived in a big old house. I took food to them, and the Office of Refuge, I did the food. Okay, I went out and bought the food. So I was responsible when they called the next day and said, where's the food? And I said, what do you mean? I took food over there. She said, they didn't have any food to eat last night. So I went back over there and I said, this chicken, but I bought chicken that had no bones and it wasn't in any particular shape, so they didn't know it was chicken. I had purchased celery and some other vegetables that were not root vegetables, and they were used to root vegetables. The rice that I got was not the kind of rice they liked. We like to separate our rice, and they like theirs to glom together. I got the rice wrong. I got everything wrong. I had forgotten that they'd just come out of a camp. And they were just used to eating a big bowl of porridge or gruel or whatever you want to call it. So I thought, I really got to help these people. I mean, I blew it. This is my first blow it time. So I went back the next day to check on them, and we had taken them, we had tried to make sure they were comfortable. But they wouldn't open the windows of their house, so they couldn't get a cross draft. And I asked them why they didn't open the windows, and they said, well, we put our clothes out on the line last night. We washed them and put them out there. Now, they're not using complete sentences, okay? We did half of this in pantomime. But anyway, they put their clothes out, and somebody burned their clothes on the line. So they shut the windows and closed the house up to protect themselves. So I contacted as many Baptist churches as I could to start a fan club. We needed to get fans for them. If they're not going to have open windows, they needed fans. So we had a fan club. Well, it's getting close to time for school. And I thought, these kids, they're going to have a hard time. They can't speak English. They don't understand the rules, the regulations. Nothing. So we put together backpacks. We got brand new backpacks for everybody. Got them school supplies. And just happened to be a man in my church who had served in Vietnam. And he spoke a little Vietnamese. So I asked him to go with me, with others, to deliver these goods to the Vietnamese family. And he said he would. He would meet me there. So he got there first, and I got there with my friends, and we brought the bags of backpacks and school supplies. And he talked to them, and we all left. And as we're walking down the sidewalk to our cars, he said, oh, by the way, I want you to know what they call you. I said, they call me a name? He said, oh, yeah. He said, they have decided that in their village there was always a big man who helped them. And you're a big woman. And I said, you need to go back and tell them it's not me. It's the big man. But they still thought I was the big woman. When I was a school teacher in California, the kids would let each other know that if I was in a good or bad mood. If I would open the door and I was in a good mood, they'd say, oh, Miss L, how are you today? And if I opened the door and they knew I was in a bad mood, they'd say, missile, 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 missile. Because they knew there was going to be an explosion. With my nieces and nephews and really close friends, I taught them the song, I Like to Eat Apples and Bananas, which is a working on pronunciation song. And I did a lot of English teaching, and so that was just an easy thing to do. So the song goes, I like to eat, I like to eat, I like to eat apples and bananas. And you change the vowel all the way through the song. So the first vowel we usually use, which is easiest of all, is Bonono. So I became the big Bonono. So my nieces and nephews call me Bonono. And once in a while they may call me something else too, but I'm the big Bonono to most of them.